Hi there. My name is Edisham Khan, and I am with Peekage, a digital sampling platform. Thank you so much for joining us today on Peekage's Fireside Chat, where we discuss trends in brand marketing. Today, I'm so excited to have with us the one, the only Marina Tran-Vu, who is the CEO and founder of Equo, a Vietnamese based company that was just backed by Techstars. And not only that, but Marina was just named one of 21 women entrepreneurs to watch in 2021 by Flicks. Marina, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So we know where you are now, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background and how you got there. If you'd want to share some of that with our viewers.
Sure. I'm actually originally from Canada. I was born in Calgary, raised in Vancouver, and then lived in Toronto for about 8 years. So I've been all over Canada. And in my previous life, basically I had launched brands and products for companies including Unilever, Bacardi, and LG. And then from there was something personal that happened within our family, and then that actually brought me over to Vietnam about 2 years ago. And I started our business about 1 year ago, just over a year ago now. And it's kind of been a whirlwind since. Basically, the idea around Equo is that it's a sustainable brand that provides 100% plastic-free, compostable solutions for everyday single-use plastic items. And we started off with drinking straws, and then we're moving on into utensils as well. So that's really how our journey started. And we launched onto Kickstarter first, just to validate our product and our proposition. And then from there, struggled through the pandemic, but now we're here and we've launched in market in Australia, Canada, US, and in Vietnam.
Wow. That's just extraordinary. You are just on a mission to change the way we think about straws and sustainability, and I love that. So that was one of the areas that I wanted to start off with. In kind of that big change, what have been, some of the challenges or some of the big, hurdles that you've had to overcome in really trying to transition folks and how they look at straws and sustainability in that aspect?
Yeah, I guess our first biggest challenge was something that everyone dealt with, which was just launching during the pandemic in general. Basically, if you've ever tried to launch your business during the pandemic, for some people it worked really well. For us, it was actually right before the pandemic, and then we struggled through that because of logistical issues. Things were really difficult to ship when everything was shut down and people weren't allowed to gather. Things were very difficult to produce even as well. So that was one of the biggest struggles we had early on. But specifically with our brand and with the category, I think the biggest hurdle we had was just people's notion about the category being very commoditized and not really giving straws or forks or anything like that a second thought, which is something we wanted to change. And that's where we kind of came in with our brand that we developed with Equo. We wanted to give meaning to the category and basically brand a commoditized category and get people to care about something that they never would have cared about before. So it's kind of similar to the concept around maybe bottled water or tissue paper, where now people call like Kleenex by name, or they call I want Aquafina or Fiji water. It's something that people may not have thought twice about, but now they care about. And so that's what we're trying to do with this category too.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I know in the past year, especially, I've looked at products like that in a different way. And a lot of us have maybe had more time on our hands, of course, and, had time to do more research, but it's just amazing, what's going on. I know, I'm in the US, of course, and the oceans and how much, plastics and straws, of course, are a factor, of course. And now you're going on to utensils. So that's just amazing. And with one of the challenges is just the education piece, like you were saying. What do you think would be your advice to other entrepreneurs that have that same aspect to their product, that it's a difficult education piece? You're kind of educating the market on a new category or kind of even a new way to look at things. What advice would you have for folks in that position?
Yeah, I would say probably the first thing is make sure you're not doing the same thing over and over again. And what I mean by that is the definition of doing something kind of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's the same thing when it comes to a category like sustainability. You can't keep telling people that plastic is bad for the world, and beat it kind of over their heads with it over and over again, expecting that, the more you say it, that the more it's going to be ingrained in their head. It's just really kind of pivoting how you communicate that. And that's one of the things I think that appeals to people about us. We not only quantify some of the damages of plastic for them. For example, when we say things like, 50% of all plastic produced is only used once, people are like, oh, that's actually quite shocking, when we quantify in that way. And then when we also say, by the way, this is what we're trying to do. If you can't afford it, and if it's available to you, try to make the better, more sustainable switch. And in that way, we're actually coming at it from a more welcoming angle versus what I think most people are used to, which is if you're using plastic right now, you're a terrible person and you're going to kill a turtle or a whale. So that's how we approached it. And I think that's what's resonating now.
Yeah. That just paints a picture when you say that, and when you use those images and everything. And so I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great approach. Absolutely. And so entrepreneurs come from all different backgrounds. They have all sorts of different experiences. You have such an extraordinary background. What do you think in your background and what got you here has been the biggest lesson or biggest thing that you were able to use in the position that you are in now? What was that unique thing for you?
I think the biggest unique thing that kind of made everything so successful so far for Equo is the fact that I just stayed really authentic to what my skill sets were and what I knew and what I didn't know. So, for example, I make it very, very clear I'm a first-time entrepreneur. I'm going to make a lot of different mistakes. I may not be the strongest person in accounting or finance or investments or things like that, but I do have this, strong foundation in building out products and giving a narrative and a brand that people can care about to draw them in. And so that's really what I leaned into. And that's really kind of like the old adage, it sounds weird, but stick to what you know, leverage that, and then learn all the things that you don't know, or, surround yourself with people who do know the things that you don't know, and then kind of build yourself from there.
Wow, that's great. And that's one thing you have to realize in the beginning is failure is part of the success. I mean, and there's nobody that's become successful that hasn't failed hundreds of times, so you got to just enjoy the ride. You got to enjoy the ride, really. So one thing I definitely wanted to touch on is, you have had so much press, you've been all over. I mean, you've won so many awards, everything. And you're almost an influencer, a personality just on your own, just by yourself. But, of course, other brands, a lot of the times, don't know where to start. Social media, a lot of my guests, of course, are either, high level or have a lot of presence. There's so many brands, for instance, at Peekage that we work with. This comes up all the time in terms of social media reviews, influencers. There's so much out there. There's just a lot of noise and so much out there. What would you recommend to a newer, younger brand that wants to use their resources in a efficient way in terms of social media?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing is that just make sure that you are living and breathing your brand or your product, because at the very beginning, when you start off, you are your biggest advocate. You are your biggest champion. And if you can go around and tell people what your favorite Netflix show is, you can go around and tell people about your product and sell your product. Because if you think about it, telling someone about your favorite Netflix show is basically selling it to them and getting them to try to watch it. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I kind of keep as a rule of thumb, and it sounds weird because you can get overloaded, but when you're starting out, every chance that you get, you should take. Take every opportunity there is to tell someone about your product. Wherever it's obviously cost effective and ideally free, take every chance to tell people about your product. One of the things, for example, I do is I put on my Zoom background and automatically you see hey, what's that behind her? That's just telling people about your product without even saying a word. So take every opportunity that you can to tell someone about your product, because that already itself is free marketing.
Well, I must say that I love that background, and I hadn't even gotten a chance to see the utensils yet, and they look very cool. I'm seeing a fork, I'm seeing knives, and are those chopsticks, if I'm not mistaken?
No, those are actually bundles of straws.
Oh, I couldn't tell. I think in my mind I was hoping for chopsticks, because I'm a big fan myself. But maybe future, maybe some ideas. I'll send you a message later. We'll talk. So, of course, that's how we all get to success, is through failure and through learnings and lessons and everything like that. And one of the things I'm really curious about is if you had to go back and do it all over again, if Equo could start, from week one or month one or whatever you think may be appropriate, what would you go back and change or do a little bit differently, if you could go back in time?
If I could go back in time, and I say this only because, it's more of an afterthought versus a regret. But if I could, I would have gone back and built my team first versus building the brand. One of those things that people will tell you, and I will tell you as well, is like, it's again an old saying, so I hate to kind of say it, but like if you want to go fast, you go by yourself, but if you want to go far, you go with other people. I truly believe that, and that's one of the hardest things I've learned is, being a solo kind of entrepreneur. It can get really tough, and sometimes you do need those people to help you, right? I have an amazing team now, which is great, but I think back about how much more helpful it could have been, or how much I could have been able to avoid a lot of pitfalls if I had, so like a partner or a team already there right from the very beginning.
Very cool. Very cool. No, that's excellent. And that's something that just comes with experience, of course. One thing I'm very curious about, we talk about this a lot of times with brands, is competition, of course. Food and bev, products like yours, competition is just brutal. You have a unique kind of competitor, which is plastic straws, of course, and then other things that maybe I'm not even aware of. If you could just share some of the competitive challenges that you've had, how you've dealt with them, and maybe some insight into the straw world and what goes on there.
Yeah. So the first part I would say is like, yes, in terms of direct competitors, plastic is technically our biggest competitor, not only just in terms of sustainability, but also actually in terms of cost itself. It's just so cheap right now, that's why people are defaulting to it. It stands up, it's sturdy. So that's kind of on one side. The second biggest competitor we actually have is paper straws. Those have actually come in as like, the backfill for a lot of the plastic straws that have taken place. But one thing that, a lot of people may not know is like, I would encourage them to double check where their paper straws are coming from to see if they are lined with plastic, to see how much actually paper they use in terms of their production. A lot of times, and this is why McDonald's had actually recalled their distribution of paper straws originally when they did it a couple of years ago, was because they found that some of the straws that they created, just because they didn't want them to unravel and disintegrate super quickly like most paper straws are known to do, they actually had to increase the amount of paper that was used and made them so thick they actually weren't recyclable. And there's a lot of other things with paper straws, like their carbon footprint in terms of what they produce versus plastic straws as well. So that's another side. And then the rest of it, I would say, is like we have two other sets of competitors, which are kind of the novelties. So the pasta straws, I don't know if you guys have seen those, but pasta straws, it got very popular for a while until there was like a pasta shortage. It was actually in the news. It's weird, but there's that. There's straws made of whatever products and different flavors, but I call them novelty because for one reason or another, they may not actually stand up to the quality test or what people actually try to utilize straws for a while. So they're the straws that are, I would say, a fad. And then there's the straws that are similar to ours or pretty much the same sort of products, but they are produced en masse. And I see those as competitors because, if I thought, and if the category had thought and consumers thought that alternatives like grass or rice or sugarcane, which we produce, but have been around for 5 or 10 years, were actually working in an effective solution, they would have been everywhere by now. And the single-use plastic drinking straw category would not be growing double-digit, but it still is, which means that for some reason, any of the products within the category are not serving a need, whether it's a product education need, whether it's a quality need or a distribution need, they're not serving it right now. And that's where we come in with our brand, and with not only educating the consumer, but grabbing their attention and making them care about the category. And so I say all those competitors because that's how we, I think, found our niche within the space.
Very cool. Yeah. It's funny that you said that because one of the things you mentioned was, plastic straws. And I've had plastic straws before, and they kind of get gross after a while. You really have to be good about cleaning the plastic out really efficiently and really,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've experienced this, but they develop bacteria like very quickly, I found. And I usually just end up throwing them away, unfortunately, because, you don't want to end up using that. And that's one of the aspects I've just found not great about plastic straws.
Yeah, I would say that's for plastic straws, but also I think that's what some people are finding, at least through the feedback that we've received about reusable straws. It's kind of the same sort of notion too, is that, I think the thought of having a reusable straw is awesome, and a lot of people gravitate towards it. And I think anything that reduces kind of single-use plastic waste, I think is great. But the reality is that sometimes there's not that, convenience or that functionality where you have a sink all the time right beside you where you can rinse out your straw, or you have to carry it with you. And we help to solve a lot of that by saying, hey, you know what? Don't worry about washing it. Don't worry about carrying it. Just dispose of it like you would any other paper or plastic straw, but use ours because it decomposes in months, not centuries. So.
Yes, quite the difference. And then the funny thing is, the other image that this came straight to my mind when you were talking about the paper straws and soda. I'm sure if anyone listening or viewing is had a soda with a plastic or a paper straw, sorry, that those fall apart very quickly. I remember before this whole pandemic started and everything, just having a big soda at the movies and just having that paper straw. I think by halfway down, it was just like folded and all messed up, and yeah, it's just not great. It's just not a good experience. So what do you see as the biggest spark here? How do you change people's behavior? I know that you have a product that goes directly to consumer, but of course we're experiencing straws at the movies, we're experiencing straws at restaurants. What do you think is the next thing for Equo in terms of really getting to that next step of changing people's minds and perceptions?
Yeah, well, you kind of hit it right on the head. That's actually the reason why we've gone with both a direct-to-consumer model as well as the B2B model. We know, obviously, a lot of our volume and our revenue is probably going to come from the B2B side, just based off of volume alone.
Sure.
But that's where we also, again, don't want to be like these other no-name manufacturers that are producing these products and just producing them, at a certain cost and not really caring about, whether or not the consumer understood what it's for, right? And that's why we have the direct-to-consumer brand, because we want to educate people on the different materials that are being used, why these materials are better, or why they actually should care about plastic straws, despite the fact that people are like, oh yeah, it's not even one of the top 10, pollutants in the oceans. Like, at the end of the day, what you have to kind of consider in your mind, and if you were to realize this, is that every single plastic straw that was ever produced since 1888 is still on the earth today. That's how long they stick around, And if you're using billions and billions of straws every single year, that's going to accumulate, and you can guess how much has accumulated over the hundreds of years since it's been invented, So that's what we have to take the time to educate consumers on. It's not that plastic is bad, it's that why is it so bad, and why is single-use plastic so unnecessary. So that's what we try to do with the direct-to-consumer side. But what we also realize is sometimes these jarring facts and sustainability itself may not be enough for people to be interested. So you kind of have to build an attractive brand that maybe resonates with people and their lifestyle, or in their colors, or in how they express themselves, and draw them in that way. And then hopefully on that side, consumers will be able to say, hey, this is something that I really want to stand behind, and put the pressure on these bigger companies that, we've been trying to get their attention for a while now, and maybe they're not paying attention to us, but maybe they'll listen to consumers who are actually using us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. For myself, I know it's almost like an easy thing. I see a product like yours, and I'm like, absolutely. Oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. I love this product. I never knew I'd be excited to try a straw. Like this is great. And one of the things that I've heard from, I work with a lot of different companies. There's one, company that I go to for knowledge and all those type of things, sustainable brands. And one thing they've seen is that 80% of millennials or Gen Z will switch immediately if they find an equal or higher quality product that's sustainable. If they find out a brand they're using is not sustainable and there's something just as good or even better, they'll switch. Now, maybe that's a little bit different for the older generation. Maybe it's not as easy to get them to switch, or maybe it takes a little bit more nudging. Have you seen this aspect as well, that the age of the consumer makes a pretty direct difference in what their buying decisions are, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? I think we've kind of seen different responses across the board, but
Hmm.
you're right. A lot of the later generations, like especially Gen Z, they actually come out with this amazing sort of forethought around
Hmm.
putting sustainability first, not putting it kind of on like an agenda of like one, two, three, and then it's sustainability. They
Sure.
really care about that, and that's really nurtured, from a young age, and that's something that they really want to help affect change on. And so I've seen that obviously a lot. But that's not to say that, some of the older generations aren't learning. I think one of the things that people are starting to see, especially if you have kids or grandkids or, students, one of the things that people can really relate to about
Mhm.
sustainability in general is just how much they don't want future generations to pay for
Hmm.
something that they use today and use only for a second. They don't want future generations to pay for that. And when they start to see the effects of climate change, which is obviously a lot more prevalent now, but when they start to see that, then they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe this sustainable product might be a little bit more inconvenient, or might be a little bit more something I'm not used to, or a little bit more expensive. But I know that if I don't pay for it now, someone that I care about later on is going to pay for it later.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great point. And thankfully we have so much more information out there readily available. Of course, at our fingertips. And brands like yours are just doing such a great job of just taking it to another level, saying, okay, here's the information, but here's what we're going to do about it. Here's the way we actually create change. So that really takes me to my last question is what's next? What do you think is the biggest up and coming just thing for Equo people should know about, people should get excited about? I know you mentioned the utensils. Feel free to chat about that. I'd love to hear more. But yeah, what's next for Equo?
Yeah, I would say after our drinking straws, which we're still kind of like, hoping to get more widely accessible and available to, just the whole world, but especially in the US and Canada and Australia. Besides that, what we're looking at is our utensils. And the utensils that we're launching are quite unique. They're made of sugarcane. And
Oh.
not only that, but we're looking to solve multiple problems, not only just solving the single-use plastic problem with our utensils, but part of that too is now with, COVID and the pandemic, but also with time and efficiency, what we're actually doing is we're pre-packaging a fork, knife, and spoon into like a sleeve so that it can help cater to takeaway and
Mm.
delivery, and also
Wow.
helps with a lot of the sanitary things that people are concerned about, and it's perfect timing for it, especially right now when delivery is so hot during COVID.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think well over half my meals that were delivery through all that COVID. I try to do cooking here and there, but let's get real. I think a lot of us were just getting Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever you have available. So perfect timing, awesome product. I could literally talk to you about straws, utensils, sustainability all day. Thank you so much, Marina. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have on today's Fireside Chat. Thank you so much again, Marina, for joining me. This has been fantastic. I know our viewers are going to get so much insight out of this. And thanks to you, viewing, for joining me again on this Fireside Chat. We'll, of course, continue to have lots of amazing entrepreneurs and leaders in the DTC and CPG space. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time.